September 1, 1943, for 30 hours a cold, windswept stretch of beach near Sicily, Italy. The only sound that mattered was the sickening, high-pitched thrum, metallic scream that clawed through the pre-dawn darkness. Sergeant Major Tommy Rourke, a veteran of North Africa, gripped the steel rail of the landing craft with knuckles bleached white. The air was thick with the scent of diesel, salt spray, and the acrid, terrifying smell of spent explosives lingering from earlier bombardments. Ahead, the low, angry silhouette of the Italian coastline promised only a bloody welcome. Tommy looked at the other men. Just at the ramp, he was a small cog in the vast, overwhelming machine of Operation Baytown, but his anxiety was singular, personal. They were assaulting beaches now thought to be lightly defended, yet every shadow seemed to conceal the infamous German $88 text mm flak gun, a weapon Allied intelligence insisted was still a pure anti-aircraft battery. Tommy knew better. They all knew better. That weapon, originally designed to swat planes from the sky, had proven to be the most devastating anti-tank cannon the Allies had ever faced. Its flat, terrifying trajectory and high muzzle velocity could punch through the armor of a Sherman tank like paper, often before the tank could even register a threat. But it wasn't the German defensive line that held his immediate, paralyzing focus. It was the vessel beneath his worn leather boots. This landing craft was not one of the old, reliable LCs. It was an experimental beast, a prototype of the new LST landing ship tank, a squat, blunt-nosed monstrosity of a vessel. It was designed to do the impossible, beach itself and vomit out heavy tanks, trucks, and artillery directly onto the shore. No more tedious, dangerous transfers to smaller vessels miles out to sea. No more waiting. This was a direct line to the battle. As the LST's massive hull grated against the sand, the sudden shudder violently reset his reality. The ramp groaned, then began to lower with a deafening metallic screecher sound that was against all tactical logic, announcing their arrival to the entire Axis command. The freezing wind hit his face, carrying with it the distant rattle of machine gun fire. Close enough to feel like a personal threat, the steel ramp kissed the sand. You can almost feel that moment. The final, terrifying transition from the safety of the sea to the unforgiving, bullet-swept land. They were out, they were exposed, and now the heavy earth-shaking rumble of the first Sherman tank began to fill the beach, disembarking from the LST's belly, ready to face the impossible might of the unseen $88 text mm. The technological arms race had just shifted from the air to the beachhead itself. What deadly, unseen German marvel was waiting beyond the dunes? Ready to counter this sudden, heavy arrival, the Sherman rumbled onto the beach, its tracks chewing through the wet sand. But for Tommy, the relief of heavy armor was fleeting. The tank, the stalwart M for Sherman, represented the Allied philosophy of quantity over quality, reliable, mass-produced and mobile. The Allies could afford to lose 3 of them to kill 1 German tank, but losing even one now, on this fragile beachhead, meant a catastrophic loss of momentum. Their intelligence briefs were haunted by one word: Tiger. The German PZK PFWI Tiger I tank was not just a vehicle, it was a psychological weapon. Introduced in 1942, it was the physical embodiment of the German Blitzkrieg doctrine that demanded overwhelming, swift force at the point of attack. While the Blitzkrieg was initially built on speed and coordination, the Tiger added a terrifying new variable: invulnerability. This machine was a direct counter to Allied tank development. Its frontal armor was up to 100 mm thick, nearly impenetrable to the standard $75 text mm gun carried by the early Shermans, especially at combat ranges. More critically, the Tiger mounted a weapon that could not be ignored: the $88 text mm KWK-36L56 gun, the same anti-aircraft gun that had been successfully adapted for anti-tank duty. The appearance of the Tiger fundamentally shifted tank warfare. Previously, tank battles were fluid, often decided by flanking maneuvers and speed. With the Tiger, the German High Command had created a machine that could engage and destroy enemy tanks from distances they couldn't even return fire from. A German gunner, trained meticulously, could pick off Shermans from over a mile away, before the Americans even knew they were targeted. Captain Dave Harris, the company commander, watched his lead Sherman navigate a patch of soft sand. He knew the odds. The American response was not immediate technological parity that would take too long. Instead, it was tactical. The Sherman must use the environment. He'd drilled into his crews, hit them in the sides, hit them in the rear. They needed to be fast and coordinated, engaging the slow, fuel-hungry Tiger in groups of 3 or 4, hoping to overwhelm the German gunner's attention. The thrum of Tommy's LST was replaced by the deep, resonant engine sound of the Sherman pushing inland. The machine was a symbol of hope, but it carried a brutal burden. It was already obsolete. The great technological leap had been made by the enemy, and the war was now a desperate race for the Allies to catch up, or invent a new way to fight the beast. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted half a mile down the beach. Not the deep crump of Allied naval artillery, but a sharp, clean crack. The Sherman's engine's sound choked. A moment of silence. Then the distinct, heavy sound of metal tearing metal. The Tiger had found its target. Section 3. The race for penetration and the heat shell. The crack echoed. Stark and final. The smoke curling from the ruptured hull of the Sherman wasn't just burning fuel. It was the annihilation of 4 men, the vaporization of Allied tactical advantage. Dave Harris watched the smoke pillar rise, a morbid marker. The Tiger hadn't even revealed its position. The shot had come from an impossible distance. This was the crushing reality of fighting a technological superior. You don't fight fair. You just try to survive. The war machine race now focused on a single, desperate metric: penetration. How do you pierce 100 millimeters of hardened, sloped steel? Simply making the Allied guns bigger wasn't feasible for existing chassis. The recoil would shatter the tanks, and the ammunition weight would cripple supply lines. The answer lay in a radical new field: explosive physics. Enter the high explosive, anti-tank heat shell. This wasn't kinetic energy, the brute force of steel hitting steel. This was controlled chemical fury. The heat round worked on the principle of the Monroe effect. Inside the shell was a liner, usually copper, surrounding a cone of high explosive. When the shell struck the armor, the explosive detonated, collapsing the copper liner into an ultra-hot, high-velocity jet of molten material, often traveling at speeds of over 30,000 feet per second. This jet didn't punch the armor, it melted and vaporized a hole straight through it, spraying lethal spall and plasma into the tank's fighting compartment. The impact of this technology was immediate and democratizing. Suddenly, smaller, lighter weapons like the American $75 Text mm gun with its specialized heat ammunition, or the infantry portable bazooka could theoretically kill a Tiger. The field of engagement was leveled, not by building bigger tanks, but by making the enemy's formidable armor irrelevant. The massive, complex protection of the Tiger could be defeated by a carefully shaped cone of copper and explosive. Charge back on the beach. Sergeant Major Rourke, now leading his squad through the sparse cover of scrubland, heard a new sound. A sharp, distinct whiz-thwack that sounded less like artillery and more like a monstrous slingshot. It was an infantry bazooka team firing its first round inland. The shot, while missing the unseen Tiger, carried a profound message. The infantry were no longer just cannon fodder. Equipped with this new technological equalizer, they were suddenly tank killers.